2, 1. Hey, everybody, welcome to another streaming session with the Game Addicted Show. Really fighting to try to find time to do these rankings. I am sleep deprived every day. My time is very, very limited. So, if you're watching this, and if you just enjoy just a smidge, just like a little inkling of enjoyment, give me that follow, guys. Because believe me, the amount of effort that goes into this in the background is not being displayed on. No, it's fine. You know what? I want to earn it. Let me earn that follow. So if you're watching on the YouTubes, head over to my Twitch channel. Give me a follow there. That's my main platform. That's where I plan to have live discussions. I think it's the perfect platform for talking college sports, talking live on any team you want me to speak about. Do you want me to convince your team is the best or the worst? Do you want me to talk crap in a certain conference? Really good at doing that. So yeah, give me a follow, and you Twitch followers. If you missed part of this, feel free to head over to my YouTube channel, and you could see any archives of all these college football rankings after the 14-day mark. So yeah, but Twitch, I always want to stress, is my main platform. Really striving hard to get to that 50 mark. I don't know if I'm going to become an affiliate. I know I have that little goal up there, but I just would love to hit 50, you know? So let's have a get there. I'm going to adjust my camera here a little bit so I'm nice and centered. Okay. So, for those of you who've been following, you guys know the drill. This is where I discuss college football rankings, going into depth about every team when it comes to their VPI rankings. And if you're new to this channel, you'll know that I'll let you guys know that VPI is a formula I made up. It's where I look at a team's total offense, their total defense, their for their opponents and their opponents, along with their strength of schedule, combining all that data, no personal input whatsoever, purely data driven, and spit out top 25 rankings. Always fun, always controversial, and always kind of tricky to explain. There's one team in particular that I look at the numbers, they make sense in the background, but the concept is going to be very difficult to explain. So we'll get to it. It'll be towards the end of the stream. But let's jump into this with the team that I hate that I have to discuss. And that's with Oregon. Not that I hate the Oregon Ducks, but I hate that there's such a big discrepancy between what's showing up in the AP polls, where I would love if Oregon was a top 25 school. But the truth is, I mean, the Power the Power 5 conferences, they're not even ranked, number 5. They're weaker, than the American Athletic Conference. Heck, I mean, they're probably even weaker than the Mountain West. The Pac-12 is having such a bad year, and there's only two real decent teams, and Arizona State's not one of them. Actually, let's jump into the Pac-12. Let's you guys see this. Actually, Arizona State, pretty close to being a top 25 team on here. I know that they're number 18, looking at the rankings here in the AP polls, but yeah, Oregon is the only team, and they're barely in the top 25. UCLA moving up the rankings. That was, it was something of a win. Arizona is the worst ranked school. Oh, the second worst. Must have lost to UConn. So UConn must have took that title when they lost to UMass. But yeah, there's a few solid teams that, as the season goes on, they have a chance to move into the top 25. I know UCLA plays Washington, a very winnable game for them. Arizona State, let's see who they play. They play Utah. That's a winnable game. That's against a tough school. So yeah, some big games for them. Also, let's see who Oregon plays. Oregon will be matching up against. They had a bye week this week, which is also partly why they didn't change the rankings. Cal, I knew that. Cal, very winnable games. Cal's the second worst, team in the Pac-12 conference. So, yeah, Pac-12 really struggling. And I'd really hate to say this about someone in the Pac-12 conference, but yeah, they are severely overrated. Did really have no business in the top 10. Barely have any business doing the top 25. And just looking at this, I mean, I know they only have that one loss against Stanford, and which Stanford, I know lost to Arizona State, but they're 3-3. But outside of that, I mean, look at everything else. I mean, they beat Arizona, which is the second worst team in college football. They beat a Division II school, which is treated as the worst team in college football. Um, on the opposite end of that, you have a huge win over Ohio State, which is noticeable, and then a big one over Fresno State. Though Fresno State are they? I just want to make sure are they ranked in the top 25? They are not, interesting enough, and I don't have ranked in the top 25 either. They are 5-1, and that is a solid win. Let's see, Mountain West Conference, Fresno State. Yeah, see, even 5-1, they're ranked number 35 here. So just one noticeable win and two really, really crappy wins and a loss against a mediocre school. So that's really the explanation why Oregon is ranked. There's such a huge discrepancy because there's really nothing you can hang your hat on. You have Ohio State, but is that enough when you're playing, I said, in the worst conference of the Power Five, and have a pretty bad loss to Stanford? That keeps getting worse. Stanford beat Arizona State, Oregon would have probably moved up in the rankings here, but because they lost, they basically stayed the same. So yeah, with that being said, there are chances for Oregon to move up. Like I said, this weekend they're going to play against Cal, but the following weekend they're going to play against UCLA, which will be big for both schools. So, still a chance to recover here. They're being rewarded in the AP polls, but yeah, Oregon really, really struggling. Hate to say they should not be a top 10 team, not even close to that. Moving on to Texas A&M. Texas A&M wasn't ranked last week in either here or the AP polls. Had a massive, massive win over Alabama. Now, Alabama, if you guys have been watching, last week in the VPI ranks, they're ranked number 5, which is ironically what they dropped down to in the AP polls. But, yeah, that was a massive one. Look at some of these numbers here. The strength of production, which is the total offense and total defense of Texas A&M's opponents and their opponents' opponents, number 3. So those teams that they're facing are putting up big numbers and putting up like stellar defenses. So absolute brutal there. And look at their strength of schedule, number 14 in the nation. Funny enough, I was looking at strength of schedule, and there actually is a set formula for calculating strength of schedule, right? Where, like I mentioned, it calculates, you're looking at your opponents and your opponents' opponents. And you're essentially looking at where your opponents account for 2/3 of your score, and your opponents' opponents calculate for 1/3 of the score. But when I compare mine to everybody else's, the rankings are completely different, and it's set numbers. Now, one thing that it could be is that, and I think this is a big part of it, is that the way I treat Division II schools or FCS schools is I treat them as the worst school. So I assign them by default 12 losses, like if they played a standard 12 season, and then if they, as if they also, everybody they played also had losses. So they have like a 144 loss, whatever it is, for their opponents in total. So I think that when you throw those numbers in, maybe it's possible that they just exclude that, which might be another way I might calculate this, where I just, you play them, but it doesn't do anything. But the reason I have it set up this way is because I really want to punish teams that lose to FCS schools. So, because you shouldn't be rewarded for playing them, and you should really be punished if, for losing against them. So I think that's what's really going to differentiate like the order of the strength schedule for the way I calculate it versus how many was calculated on other sites. But I do find it, with the exception of like one or two sites, which has pretty close rankings. There's some like that, like even the ESPN's with their power index, which again isn't strength of schedule when they calculate. It's a predictive model with what ESPN does with their power index. where like this is a resume based model based off what you've done, not what what's expected of your team. So yeah, I find that very interesting that there's such a huge discrepancy in the rank and strength schedule, because that is something that's set in stone. Like there's really there shouldn't be a difference really between, except the FCS stuff. Sure, that could affect it, but yeah, I find that very interesting. And again, if you're one last thing I'll say on that is if they are including the records of FCS schools and their opponents as well, because those will be made up of a bunch of other um, FCS schools, since they have such a low winning percentage when playing against Division One schools, it wouldn't make sense to include the records. You know what I mean? Like maybe you're playing like against Idaho. Let's say Idaho's doing really well, and let's say they're undefeated. They have like 12 wins, right? You shouldn't have that be go towards your strength of schedule, because again, those 12 wins are against weaker division. So essentially, the probability that would transfer over if they were all playing against Division One schools, very unlikely. So, anyways, interesting math. Let's just say that I have an approach. It little, you can agree or disagree with it, but I find it's the fairest way to treat this. But anyways, enough of that little tangent there. Yeah, so Texas A&M, number 24 here, a little bit higher in the AP polls. I'm not going to split hairs; they're 21, so we're talking about a 3-spot difference. And yeah, I think that the polls and my rankings are pretty much in line of how they think. Moving on here, Air Force ranked number 23. Now, Air Force is interesting because, yeah, let me just double check here, but they are not ranked in the top 25 in the AP polls, but they're ranked here, even though they have one loss against Utah State. So, pretty interesting that a small school with one loss, usually, one loss will kill you if you play for a small school in the Mountain West, but the Mountain West having a really good year. Um, 5-1, had a big win over Wyoming, who Wyoming was ranked last week on here, which was unranked in the AP polls. But yeah, that was a big win for them. Strength schedule pretty poor, but when we look at some of the other schools that are ahead, you'll see that they're kind of in line with some of the bigger name schools. So you'll see it when we're looking at that, and also strength of production. But yeah, well deserved to deserve being top 25. They got the resume for it. Total offense good, total defense a top 10. That might surprise a lot of people, but Air Force could be legitimate. That was their biggest win of the season against Wyoming. So that was an undefeated team they beat. Moving on to number 22, the Big 12 Conference. Big 12 Conference, some people might consider it weak because it's really top heavy, you might say, with just really Oklahoma, and Oklahoma themselves is struggling. We'll get into Oklahoma a little bit later, but actually, you'd be surprised that they are the third ranked conference, behind the SEC and the Big Ten currently. Usually, and here the fun thing about those rankings, I think the past few years I've done this. I think the Big Ten has been the top conference. But I think until we get to bowl season, then that changes. I think the SEC overtook them one of those years, maybe both years, but. Yeah, the Big 12 is usually struggling, but Baylor, they are ranked on here. Are they ranked in our AP polls? They are not. That is shocking because if you're willing to rank, as you mentioned, Oregon, and Oregon not having the best stats either, right? And you have them with one more win, and that's essentially why they're ranked higher, even though their strength schedule and strength production. Their only loss is to Oklahoma State, which is undefeated. So yeah, I think Baylor definitely has a case for being in. Their biggest win looks to be against a 3-2 Iowa State, so that's probably what's hurting them. But yeah, it's hard to go 5-1. I definitely wish we were 5-1. Ole Miss, massive. You know what? I as much as I do not like the SEC, that was one entertaining game that they had against Arkansas. Yeah, really enjoyed that one, back and forth, and totally respect the call to go for two. The second that Arkansas had that last second drive, I was like, yeah, you always go for two when you're on the road. Just end the game now. um, Ole Miss, pretty big discrepancy because they are ranked number 13. It's really because I understand that they do have one loss, and you're thinking maybe that shouldn't hurt them, and they had a big one against Arkansas, but um, if you take away the Arkansas's win, like I said, you're looking at their strength of schedule on the weaker side. Strength of production, very good. They're playing some tough teams when it comes to their production. But yeah, you're really just talking about outside of Arkansas, their biggest win is against Louisville. They just play Tulane, Division II schools. So it's really that's why the discrepancy. I think the AP pools are just rewarded because they play in the SEC, and Arkansas is a really big win. I don't want to discredit that at all, but yeah, should not be ranked as high as they are. Speaking of Arkansas is 4-2, and you'll find this interesting that Arkansas has two losses, and yet I have them ranked ahead of Ole Miss. And Arkansas in the AP polls is not too far off. They're ranked number 17. So again, not to split hairs here, but here's the difference. How is a 4-2 school that lost to the Ole Miss ahead of Ole Miss by one spot? And this is the difference. I want to when you guys look at a few things here. They have two losses, but Ole Miss played 5 games, right? Arkansas has played 6. So they have the same amount of wins, but there's 2 losses come against one, a team that is ranked number 2 in my rankings, ranked number 1 in the AP polls. We'll get into that later. And Ole Miss themselves, which again is a really good school, but they beat. If you compare, their biggest win is Texas A&M, as big as a win for as Ole Miss beating Arkansas. Look at another thing to consider is that Arkansas hasn't played a Division II school, where Ole Miss has. And again, Division II schools are treated as the worst schools in college football in these rankings. So comparing those things, looking at the top 5 strength of schedule, right, looking at strength of production of 27, almost a top 25 strength of production. These numbers here being as brutal as they are is why Arkansas is still ranked 1 spot ahead of Ole Miss. So yeah, it's it's just how it works out here. You're really rewarded for loading up your schedule with this. It's not name recognition alone. And I said that we're only talking about 3-spot difference between here and what the AP pools are, but the thing in the lining with Arkansas seems to be pretty much the same. It's the Ole Miss one where there's a pretty big discrepancy. I'm not saying Ole Miss is really overrated, but it's more of they shouldn't be ranked as high, if that makes sense. Moving on, a team that I don't know why. If you guys saw my big prediction, I even put it made a little TikTok about it. Yeah, I am sorry, guys, for making that prediction. Which, you know what? I was already gloating when they were up 28-7. I was sending texts with see, these rankings don't lie. My numbers are solid, and this and that. Texas had every opportunity to win that game. And again, one thing I want to know is Texas was really underrated, going into that game. And even now, they're still pretty underrated. They're ranked number 25 in the AP. We still have them number 19 on here because, again, you have to look. Yeah, they have 2 losses, similar resume to Arkansas, where their only 2 losses are to Arkansas, which, again, we established is a really good school, and Oklahoma, who's undefeated. They haven't played a Division II school, so they should definitely be rewarded for that. They beat Texas Tech, which was a solid win for them. They beat Louisiana, which, again, is a school that everyone's overlooking. I understand they play in a small conference, but they are 4-1, so you can't overlook that. So does it look better for a team to, in this case, beat a 4-1 Louisiana versus, like we're looking at Ole Miss, who beat a Division II school? Which is more impressive, right? So making those sort of comparisons, you'll see that, yeah, Texas should be ranked higher. Again, I do not like Steve Sarkisian. I have no faith in the guy. I don't know why I picked him when they played against Arkansas. It was stupid of me, and it was really stupid to think he wouldn't find a way to lose that game against Oklahoma. But the stats were there, and the score was there for a while. They had every reason to win that game, and they just blew it. Sark just 7-win Sark. He's living up to his name. He's on his path for another 7-6 season. So yeah, so Texas still underrated. We'll see. That was probably be the toughest game of the season, or actually maybe not. There might be another. We'll get into that, but yeah, second toughest game of the season they might play. We'll see. Coastal Carolina, pretty close here. Ranked number 16 in the. I'm sorry, 15 in the AP polls. You're finding it's pretty consistent that my rankings with a few of these teams already, it seems to be consistently 3 spots over. I want to make big notice of something here because this is going to tie into a lot of the schools. Now, we're looking just at these stats here, right? Strength of production, strength of schedule. Like Coastal Carolina themselves and their total offense and all that. Oh, and also the wins and losses. But looking at these 3 components, this is what we use to calculate our VPI formula, right? Coastal Carolina, by the AP polls, is ranked number 15, right? We have a number 18. But they have the worst strength of production and the second to last in strength of schedule, right? But yet, my calculations here have them at number 18, and the AP polls have them number 15. So pretty similar thought. I just want you guys to keep that in your back of the head when we're looking at one school in particular that's coming up, because it's going to upset a lot of people when I explain it. It's a hard concept to explain, but essentially, wins have value. The more wins you have, the more value they hold, right? So when you're adding up wins, how many wins of, let's say, like we're looking at Arkansas's, right? How many more wins does Coastal Carolina, in this case, have 6 wins and 0 losses versus the school that has 2 less wins and 2 more losses? You have to look at it that way. There's a discrepancy of 4 games, not 2. If you're looking wins to wins, you're going to see, oh, well, they only have 2 more wins. How are they ranked higher than Arkansas's, right? You have to look at their wins. So they're up 2, and they have 2 less losses. So it's a discrepancy of 4, not 2. It's kind of to think of the math here on this. Kind of kooky math, I know. But I struggle to try to make sense of this every week as I try to explain it. But it'll make sense when discussing a team when it comes down to it. But I really want to bring stress to extra. Everyone can, like, how is a team like with an absolute garbage schedule that's racking up wins being rewarded? Well, clearly being rewarded by both, let's say the people in this, because wins have values, and the more you have, the more value they hold. It's a very slow climb for these teams from smaller conferences, but when they lose, it is a hard drop because they're barely rewarded as they win more. But when they lose, as we'll cover BYU in a little bit, they are punished hard for those losses. So it applies to the AP pools, and it applies here even more so, I would say. I think you're punished even more on here. But slowly climb, very, very slowly climbing up the rankings with such a weak strength of schedule, strength of production. And again, really want you to keep that in the back of your head and I'll let you guys know when we cover that team, but it'll be towards the end of this stream. Ooh, this will make some people upset. Alabama. As I mentioned before, they were ranked number 5 last week for me in my VPI rankings, where they ranked number 1 in the AP, and they dropped to number 17, right? 12 spots. How does that happen, you might be asking? Especially losing against Texas A&M, which is now considered a top 25 school, right? We both agree on that. Let's break this down, shall we? Okay, so I want to pull up the SEC because I want to establish one thing. First, I want to establish that Florida is overrated. This should not be a top 25 school. Um, they're pretty close to being one. They continue to win here, but that you're thinking that if you're going to count that as a top 25 win, it's not. Top 27 win is close to that, but I don't want you to think Florida's as good as the AP polls are making them out to be. So that's one thing to consider, right? So you might be thinking, okay, so if Florida's overrated, what is their biggest win, right? Well, it'll be Ole Miss, right? And Ole Miss has been rewarded, pretty heavily. But remember, Ole Miss on here is ranked below Arkansas. So Ole Miss is ranked number 21, and in the AP polls, they are ranked number 13. So if they're ranked number 13 on here as well, Alabama would probably be a lot higher, but they're not, right? So if your biggest win is against number 21, and I'm telling you that Florida's overrated, right? I'm saying that this school definitely deserves to be a top 25 team. But what I'm also saying is that look at their strength of schedule. It's on the wrong side. It's not even middle of the road. It's on the wrong side of that. Outside of a really good win against Ole Miss and not a and a solid loss against Texas A&M. Look at everybody else they've played, right? I'm telling you, Florida is a good win, but they are a little bit overrated. They have Division II school. They played Miami, which has a losing record. They played Southern Mississippi, which is 1-5. So the schedule isn't a team that is playing, is undefeated. That's playing, like a top 10 strength of schedule. This is a mediocre strength of schedule. It is. So if you have a lot, if you're 5-1 with a mediocre strength of schedule, how are you a top 10 team? I'm not saying Alabama, as far as talent, and I'm sure they're going to win. They might even win out. Won't return to top 10, top 5, and even number 1 spot. But with their current resume, what they've currently accomplished, we're just looking of what they're accomplishing against their opponents. Yeah, that's why they dropped 12 spots on here, and they dropped to number, like we didn't even consider Alabama number 1 on here, and let alone, they were number 5, and they dropped another 12 spots because they lost against Texas A&M, which is a good school, but this is the resume of a mediocre team right now when it comes to strength of schedule, and mediocre in the sense of a top 25. And that's another thing to consider. Remember, I'm calculating the order of 1 through 130. So we're saying Alabama is one of the best schools in the nation out of 130 schools. We're just not saying that they're, we're just not saying that they're a top 10. We're saying they're number 17, which is still really good. So I want to keep that in mind. Look at it from the lens of that, not in the top 25, but out of 130 schools, they are the 17th best school. Gives a little more perspective. What's going to surprise people again is that Penn State dropped. Penn State dropped only 3 spots. They're ranked number 4, dropped to number 7 in the AP, but here they dropped all the way to number 16. You're thinking Iowa. Iowa, undefeated, ranked number 2 in the AP, number 3 here in the VPI polls. But again, you take away Iowa, and the only noticeable win for Wisconsin, who has a way better strength of schedule, with better strength of production, more consistent. This is a really good school with Penn State. Auburn, which is, again, was overrated. I know they're not ranked this week, but they were ranked last week. And again, I've been saying that Auburn should not have been in the top 25 to begin with. So, yeah. Penn State is a really good school, plenty of time to climb up, but this is the win they needed to really solidify themselves as a top 10, top 5 school, but just wasn't to be. So plenty of football to be played. It gets crowded in the top 15. Okay, hard to explain, I know, but Penn State, I'm saying they're really good. Even though you're going to be going crazy because you're going to be going, how the heck do you have Penn State ranked below San Diego State when they have a crap strength of schedule. And again, it comes up to the slow climb of these schools, right? And look at this, there's nothing to justify here. They have the worst strength of schedule. Why would San Diego State be ranked ahead? And again, it is a differential of one. I understand that you have to look at it this way. Penn State and San Diego State have the same amount of wins, but they're not being punished for one of those losses. And if you're looking at their calculation, we're talking about a fraction that separates them. 0.25 versus 0.27. They're San Diego State simply being rewarded for being undefeated. And again, it's a slow climb for these small schools when calculating this. If they were to lose any one of these games, they would just drop off the map and they would never see the light of day again when it comes to these rankings. So that's how they're treating the AP polls generally. Like the example we're using is Coastal Carolina. That's how they're treated here as well. It's a very, those wins add up. They hold a certain value, and it's a super slow climb. And undefeated San Diego State is very different from an undefeated Georgia or Michigan and all that. I'm saying amongst the undefeated, they're at the very bottom end of undefeated schools, is what we're saying with San Diego State. But they're being rewarded basically for being undefeated. Again, if they were to lose one game, they fall off the map. Okay, I know, and it gets better because next we have University of Texas San Antonio. Same thing. They're just a smidge better in strength of schedule, just even more of a smidge better in strength of production. They have 6 wins instead of 5 wins. A very, very slow climb, And again, guys, I need to stress this enough. They're being rewarded for being undefeated, just like Coastal Carolina has been rewarded for number 15 for being undefeated. And UTSA isn't even in the top 25. But they have similar resumes. Look at this, 127 to 124. If we look at Coastal Carolina, 129, 130. Coastal Carolina has a worse strength of schedule, worse strength of production. Both 6-0. Why would you have Coastal Carolina number 15, but not San Diego State or UTSA ranked ahead of them that have tougher schedules, right? Yeah, San Diego State, worse strength of production, or strength of schedule, better strength of production. Got to consider that, guys. So I understand San Diego State is top 25 team, but if you look at the numbers, how would you justify Coastal Carolina being so much higher when, let's say, University of Texas San Antonio has a better resume? Not much of a better resume, but a better resume. So if you're saying Coastal Carolina deserves to be number 15, you also have to say that University of Texas San Antonio should be number 14. You got to be consistent. It's the AP polls are saying it, and I'm saying it here with these rankings. SMU, my favorite conference, American Athletic Conference. Well, I mean, not Pac-12. I'm a homer with UCLA, but outside of the Pac-12, my favorite conference. I always root for this conference. SMU, are they even in the top 25? They are number 23, and we were saying they should be 10 spots higher. Who is currently number 13? Ole Miss. Ole Miss team was supposed to lower. Would you say SMU being undefeated 6-0 deserves to be ahead of? Who plays in a bigger conference than Coastal Carolina? Remember, Coastal Carolina plays in the Sun Belt. Would you say that the American Athletic Conference, who I would regard as the 5th best conference right now, should they be ranked ahead with their undefeated schedule? How makes sense of these rankings? If the AP poll is saying Coastal Carolina deserves to be number 15, how is SMU and San Diego State, who play in better conferences, especially SMU, ranked below them? Explain that to me. That's so yeah, being rewarded here for being undefeated 6-0. Yeah, not much more to say. BYU, you break my heart every year. Every year I want to root for you guys to get to have a shot to playoffs. They had the resume, and gosh, did they have the resume this year to get in? But Yeah, lost. God, this is stupid Boise State. Why Boise State? You're having a mediocre season. Why would you go in there and ruin this for everybody, right? I want you guys to look at this strength of schedule for BYU. I know you guys don't believe me. Ranked number 19. BYU still has to play Baylor. They still have to play USC. They still have to play Washington State. Three Power 5 schools, right? Not to mention, I know they still I think it was Arkansas State, another school. But those three schools alone, they already have a tough strength of schedule, right? Remember, they beat Arizona State, which, again, I established isn't top 25 school, but still a really good win for them. And the balanced schedule, here's another thing. They did not play a Division II school as well. So that's already tougher with their worst loss or worst win against Arizona. Arizona is better than FCS school. I mean, even though I think Arizona lost an FCS school, let me check on that before I make that claim. Arizona did lose to the FCS school, but we're still saying if Arizona's played 100 times the FCS school, they would admit the most of those is what we're saying. But yeah, BYU had it all in front of them. And I mean, they'll still climb up. They'll still be in the top 10. But yeah, they're out of the playoff conversation. That loss, even if they're to win out, they're just not. Remember, they don't play in a title game, which that extra game against one extra really tough opponent helps a lot of these teams. And because they don't play that, it was already an uphill battle for them. So yeah, they're done. Their playoff push is done. But yeah, really, really disappointed here with BYU. But it's all right. They still have on track to have a great season, top 10. Maybe even, a New Year's Six Bowl. Still a lot to play for BYU. So we'll be rooting for them. Go Cougs. A game that might surprise you, or a team that might surprise you, is with Ohio State. Ohio State, we have about 5 spots back. We're saying we respect them. We're saying look at their strength of schedule. Brutal, number 17. Strength production, not so much, right? Right down the middle. On the right side of the middle, but not overly impressive there. But it's really the Oregon loss that's hurting them. And what happened is, because remember, Oregon lost to Stanford, and then Stanford lost again to Arizona State. So Oregon essentially got weaker because remember, when you're looking at your opponents and your opponent's production. So Stanford being the opponent of Oregon being calculated into this, essentially them losing is what's hurting them back. And there's also Maryland was a really good win. We had Maryland top 25 last week, but so that was a great win. But yeah, you have to consider that Ohio State, their biggest win is Maryland. And we're saying Maryland is good, but we're also saying Maryland is not top 25 school. They were last week, but not they lost. We're saying they are 44. That hurt them a lot. Slow climb. Remember, guys, I was one of the steps that very slow climb for some of the schools as they win. I know we'll say that specifically about small schools, but also plays big schools as well for that play, weaker schedules. So yeah, that's why we're saying that even though this is brutal, really good here, if Maryland's your biggest win, do you deserve to be a top 11 school? Which is gonna bite me in the butt saying that, especially it's gonna kill me when I get to that school. It's coming up too. It's coming up close. And that school is at Cincinnati? No, it's not. Cincinnati, we're saying is top 10. We're saying they are very overrated. We're saying they deserve to be in the top 10, but should they be number 3? Absolutely not. I'm sorry. When there's other teams that are 6-0. They're, obviously, so they have one less win than those, being 5-0. They are undefeated. They have a huge win against Notre Dame, and we'll get into Notre Dame in a little bit. But yeah, everything else aside from Notre Dame, not great. Your next biggest one from there is Temple, which is a 500 school. Everyone else has losing records, and of course, you played at a Division II school. So we're saying Cincinnati deserves to be a top 10 school. We're saying they're really good. Remember, 130 schools, they're ranked number 10. But are they ranked number 3 now? I'm sorry. And I want to refer to Cincinnati again to the playoffs, but Cincinnati is very overrated. They should not be number 3. We're saying number 10, and it's funny because the other years they were actually been ranked higher. I think like number 5 or 4, like have a real legitimate shot at the playoffs, but is not the case at this moment. Could change. Could change. They still have a tough schedule. I think they play SMU and a few other schools that are pretty tough in their conference. So American Athletic Conference is very underrated. But yeah, we'll see. So let's before people come at me, it's like, oh, they don't play SMU, do they? I don't. Let's see. I know they're in the same conference. They do play SMU. And that'll be about it. There's really nobody else. Navy will be a good one. Yeah. Yeah, I just don't see the schedule for them to continue to climb up to be in the playoffs, to be honest. And the Big Eight pools they will, but not here. Okay. Moving on to the Big Ten again. Great conference. Michigan State. Michigan State is being respected. We're talking about only a 1 spot difference. Michigan State's number 10. We're saying they're number 9. I want you to remember this because if we're saying, if the AP pools in this are pretty consistent, the logic of these wins holding value when this Michigan State team has the 112th worst strength of schedule, right? So really bad strength of schedule. Strength production is solid, right down the middle of the road. Dead center, actually. So, yeah. Couldn't get any more center than them. But, yeah, their biggest win, and we're saying, remember, the AP pool saying their top 10 school is against Rutgers was their biggest win. So, yeah. Similar logic, but yeah, 1 spot difference. A team that might surprise you. Usually I crap on Notre Dame every year. Notre Dame, we respect them. They are ranked number 14. Very underrated, we'll say here. Yes, they lost in Cincinnati, who was 5-0. But some solid wins here and there. They beat Purdue, which is a solid win. Virginia Tech was a good win. Wisconsin, I always want to state that even though they have a losing record, Wisconsin's. I want you to look at Wisconsin real quick because it's never fair to beat up on Wisconsin. I want you to see this. Wisconsin has the toughest strength of schedule in college football. And they're still 2-3. So when we're looking at your opponents and opponents, Notre Dame's calculation is included here with looking at Penn State, Michigan. That all goes towards calculating for Notre Dame. So remember that when we're looking at this. But yeah. That was actually a really good win Wisconsin had. Notre Dame had a good Wisconsin because Wisconsin is very underrated. Or maybe they're not. I don't know. But they basically played a brutal strength schedule and they said Purdue solid. So we're saying that because their strength of schedule is ranked number 11, because their strength of production is top 5, these teams are putting up some big numbers and putting some big stops on defense. That's why Notre Dame is underrated. They're 5-1, but should be a top 10 team. And as they continue to win, this should change because if you're. And here's the thing: they were. I think they were overly punished as well. Because remember, you're saying the AP polls that Cincinnati's number 3. We're saying here that Cincinnati's number 10. But yeah, that wasn't a bad loss. And same as we're saying with FCS schools, if you lose to one, you get punished. If you lose to a really good school, top 10, top 25 school, you don't get punished as hard. So it's fair both ways. But yeah, Notre Dame, number 8. Here it is, guys. This is the one that's going to drive you nuts. The one I really had to dive into because it didn't even make sense to me when I saw it, and I'm like, there's no freaking way. Here we go. We're going to spend some time on this one. Wake Forest, we are saying, is the most underrated school in college football. They're ranked number 16. They're well respected. in the AP. We are saying they should be ranked number 7. We're saying they should be 9 spots up. And you're looking on here, and I have to look at this really closely. Who did they beat? Why would they be a number 7 school? How does that make any sense? Because it's hard for me to make sense. So we're gonna look at a few things, because you're gonna say first you're gonna see strength of schedule garbage. I'm sorry, really bad strength of schedule. They even played Division II school. They played Old Dominion, which is 1-5. They played Florida State, which is 2-4. A lot of struggling teams. Who's their best win? Virginia, an okay Virginia school at 4-2. Strength production, these teams solid, right? The right side of the middle, but yeah. So how is Wake Forest ranked number 7 here? If you remember, I kept mentioning when I was looking at Coastal Carolina, when I was looking at SMU, when I was looking at UTSA, when I was looking at San Diego State, all those schools who play for way weaker conferences, I was saying even the catalyst there being Coastal Carolina. Like, these schools should be respected, especially Coastal Carolina is respected. Absolute garbage strength of schedule, right? But you have Wake Forest, who has the highest strength of schedule and the highest strength of production, if we're going to group those all teams together, right? Let's group them all together of the undefeated schools. We're saying that they are the best team in the ACC. And by all accounts, they are. I don't think anybody else in the ACC, let me just look real quick. I don't think anybody in the ACC is ranked other than Wake Forest. Yeah. And that is the case. And because of that, because they are undefeated, because again, it's a slow climb as you win when you have such a weak strength of schedule. Again, you're punished hard if they slip up. Wake Forest will fall off the map. Understand that. But because they haven't fallen off, because they're not being punished for any losses, they're only being rewarded for their wins, even though the wins are weak. That's why we're saying Wake Forest be in number 7 this week. As the schedule goes on, even if they run the table, out of all the undefeateds with this strength schedule, there's no way they overlap some of the schools that we're going to talk about here. That would all, if they were all things being the same, there's no way to have. So I don't want you guys to freak out, but we are saying as the best school in the ACC, as been compared to a team, playing in the Power 5 conference, compared to teams from the Sun Belt and American Athletic Conference and the Mountain West and all that. We are saying that this team is better than all those teams, and they should be ranked ahead. So if we're saying Coastal Carolina is being number 15, we should reward Wake Forest out of the higher ranking, because Wake Forest, by all accounts, should be better than like Coastal Carolina and SMU and UTSA, all the top 25 teams. So, yeah, that's... I know. It's frustrating, but the rankings get more and more accurate every week. Remember, the more data we get, we're only halfway through the regular season, for a lot of these teams. And a lot of these teams only played 5 games, but, for those that played 6, next week will be definitely the midway for, should be for everybody at that point, or if not almost everybody. But as of now, a good amount of teams, I would say about half of them out there, already have 6 games under the belt. So halfway through the season for a lot of these teams. Okay. So let's look into Oklahoma. And we were just ripping Wake Forest because they had 104 and 58 for strength schedule, strength production, respectively. Look at this. Pretty similar strength production. Strength to schedule, really bad, but they're better than Wake Forest, but not that much better. And again, who's your biggest win? Texas, who we're saying is underrated, is a top 25 school. But, excuse me. But yeah, outside of that, if you're going to say Wake Forest, if you're going to say, Oklahoma should be a top, in this case, top 4, getting closer. I was saying how overrated they were last week, but again, it bit me in the mouth. Now they're only 2 spot difference between the VPI rankings and here, in the AP polls, but fairly that to the AP polls to what we have here. I'm just twisting my words. Let me get my thoughts together. Comparing the AP polls to what we have here, there's only 2 spot difference, which really, I know when you get to the top 5, it's crucial. especially when talking about only 4 playoff spots. But out of 130 schools to be only within 2 spots, we're saying they're really they're really comparable. So if you're gonna reward Oklahoma for having a very similar schedule to Wake Forest, where Wake Forest's biggest win against Virginia, who's 4-2, right? Not as good. The good 4-2 is Texas. You should reward Wake Forest the same way you reward Oklahoma, because their resume is very similar. Even though Oklahoma may have more talent and better coaching and all that, what they've accomplished is very similar. Remember, this is a resume-based model. We're looking at what you've accomplished, not theoretically what you have in talent and coaching and staffing abilities and all that. We're just looking at what you've done on the field. That's strictly what we're looking at, just those numbers. So if you're going to reward Oklahoma, you have to reward Wake Forest. The logic has to stay the same. So I know I keep going back to Wake Forest, but yeah, really want to drive that thought home. Okay, a team, again, let's say hate the SEC. Kentucky, I've been saying for weeks, is very underrated. Finally, getting some good respect, right? They jumped up 5 spots, number 16. So getting close, within 6 spots. But yes, is Kentucky more deserving than Alabama? Alabama is currently, dropped to number, 17? Number 17. We're saying Kentucky should be in their spot. Why is that? Why would you do that? Well, aside from being undefeated, right? Look at the strength schedule, 74, 82 strength production, right? Let's look at Alabama. 72, right? Similar strength schedule. Production way higher, but they have that one loss, right? Against Texas A&M. We're saying Kentucky doesn't have that loss. We're saying Kentucky beat LSU, which is an okay team, right? I was wishing they're better, look better for UCLA, but I guess not. They beat Florida at the same win that Alabama has. They both play Division II schools, right? They both play some mediocre schools. Alabama played a 1-5 Southern Mississippi, right? A 1-5. Where if you look at Kentucky, even though let's say their strength schedule is similar, their strength production is where it really varies. They don't have a team that's as bad. Very balanced schedule. So if you're looking at their accomplishments, if you have a 6-0 team versus a 5-1 team, and their resume is pretty similar, why would you reward one and not the other? Right? If we're just looking at what they've done on the field, forgetting about the talent, the coaching, and all that at this point in time, is it likely? What's more likely, that Alabama runs the table or Kentucky? Alabama obviously would, more likely. But looking at this point in time, statistically, it makes more sense for Kentucky to be a top 5 school than Alabama, and that's what we're seeing here with these rankings. Stay consistent with your numbers here, guys. That's what we're doing. Again, I have zero input. This is just putting me. All I do when I put these rankings in every week, I just enter in the wins and losses, right? I say who played who won that game, right? That's it, and who lost that game. What the total offenses and total defense rankings are. And that's all I enter. I don't do anything else. This is all calculated for me. I don't enter, this is any input from my personal opinions. It's straight numbers. And that's how it's all calculated. So yeah, at the numbers, Kentucky should be a top 5 school, and Alabama shouldn't. Take that. A team that's going to surprise a lot of people being number 4, right? If you're saying Oklahoma's number 4, why, but I'm saying Oklahoma State should be number 4. You got the wrong Oklahoma in there. Oklahoma State ranked number 12. Why? Why is that? They have 5 wins. Look at the strength of schedule, right? Look at this. Let's compare them to the 2 Oklahomas together. Who looks better here? I know Oklahoma's that extra win, and it's a big extra win against Texas, right? Strength schedule number 90. Strength production number 55. Let's look at Oklahoma State. Number 78. Strength production lower, but better strength schedule, right? They're both undefeated. Is Baylor better than Texas? They're pretty close. I mean, we have Baylor in top 25 here. They're not in the AP top 25. We're saying that they're not as good as Texas, but we are saying that Baylor is a really good school. We're saying that They beat Boise State, who just beat BYU. Remember, when you're calculating this, and this is probably a big reason why Oklahoma State jumped up as well, along with the big win over Baylor, is that you're looking at your opponents. And for Boise State to beat BYU, that gives a big boost to Oklahoma State. We're looking at that, guys. That's what we're seeing here. So this all connects. It's all interlinked like a big old web. And I'm like a crazy person talking on the internet right now. But yeah, every time, even if your team had a bye week like they did here, right? Where Oklahoma State didn't even play last weekend. But without doing anything, they moved up because of what the other teams were doing. So Boise State giving them that big boost. That's why. And also Baylor beat West Virginia, right? They're just those teams going out there doing the work. Is basically going out there and doing the work for Oklahoma State. Those teams going out to win is boosting Oklahoma State, and that's why they're number 4. That's why I got the wrong Oklahoma number 4. Oklahoma State, very underrated. Look at their resumes, guys. They got a better resume. Whew, running out of my breath here. My throat's getting dry. Doing a lot of talking. We're at the 2 a.m. mark. We've been streamed for almost an hour. We got one viewer who's too shy to say anything. It's probably a bot, that jerk. This is where things should be pretty close. Well, if with the exception of number 1, these rankings would line up pretty close, right? It's the number 1 team, which we'll get into, which is kind of throwing off a lot of these. But, we're one spot difference. We're saying Iowa is the 3rd best team. A people are saying they're the 2nd best team. Now, there's such a big difference between Iowa and a lot of the teams we have here, right? The production index for Iowa is 0.5. The next closest team is 0.4. Look at this. It's such a gradual climb, right? Look at this, 24, 25, 20, 27, 28. It's so gradual with these. You have a little bit of a big jump here between Ohio State and Cincinnati. But there's such a huge jump. I know these numbers may not make a lot of sense, right? But such a huge jump for Oklahoma State to go into Iowa. Iowa playing the Big Ten Conference, the 2nd best conference currently in college football, beating up on Penn State, beating Maryland, which again is a very underrated school. They were ranked last week on here, not ranked this week. They beat Iowa State. They're beating Kent State. They have the number 16 strength of schedule, and they're winning. And what blows my freaking mind about Iowa is that they have the total defense of number 8. Going up against the strength of production. Remember, strength of production is your opponents and opponents' total offense, total defense. They're dealing with some top-notch teams out there, putting some crazy numbers on the field and putting some crazy stops out there. Doing that, but their offense is 120. Please make sense of this. This makes absolutely no sense that they're undefeated, but they are, and they're here. So yeah, I, without a shadow of a doubt, is in the playoff conversation. Can they win out? Looking at their total offense, you think that their defense would have a slip up. I know defense wins championships. Your defense is usually more consistent. Your offense can have an off night defense. Usually solid year round, right? I still don't understand how they're undefeated, but they are, and they're being greatly rewarded for it, and they're very well deserving of that. So Iowa, yes, number 3. Should be number 2. Well, we'll talk about that in a minute. Moving on to number 2 here, Georgia. Number 1 in the AP polls. Look at Georgia here, right? They beat Auburn, which again said is a bit overrated, but still beat them, right? They beat Arkansas, which should get plenty of respect. They beat Vanderbilt, right? They play in the SEC. A big thing with Georgia. This is what the SEC is guilty of. I don't know if Georgia's going to play a Division II school down the road. Let's take a look at that real quick. I know the SEC loves to do that. Second last week, they're going to play. Who is CH? Charleston Southern. And believe me, they're going to get punished for that. Don't even worry about that. But as of now, they have not played Division II school, right? They have the number 9 strength of schedule. They have number 19 strength of production. They're undefeated. Again, so far they've not played Division II school. They're going in there beating up on really good teams. 3 of those teams are 4-2. Even UAB, which I know is a small school, 4-2. All solid records. Only one school they've beaten has a losing record, which is Vanderbilt. South Carolina's 500. They have the number 1 total defense. They have 49th in total offense, right? Undefeated, absolutely killing it. I hate the SEC. I hate Georgia, but gosh dang it, you gotta respect them. And we do here with the Game of the Show. Ranked number 2. So if Georgia is ranked number 2, if Iowa is ranked number 3, who, you might be asking, is ranked number 1? The team that's been surprising us for week after week. The Michigan Wolverines. Yes, I said it. Michigan Wolverines should be the number 1 team in the nation. I've said that last week. They continue to prove me right, even though they had a close, almost had a loss to Nebraska here. But hey, you have your off weeks. Here is why. Strength of schedule, comparable, right? Georgia at number 9. Michigan is number 13. Strength of production, the teams that are playing have, put high flying offenses, stellar defenses. Number 4. Strength of production for Georgia, number 19. That's what's separating them. Both teams have not played a Division II school, so that helps. Again, you're rewarded in the system for not playing FCS schools, for playing tough schedules, and they're doing that. Wisconsin, very underrated, I would say. Wisconsin has had the worst strength of schedule in college football. The toughest, I should say, not the worst, but the toughest. They're going to hard shake. Remember, when you're looking at your opponents and you're looking at your opponents' those opponents' opponents are being calculated into this. That's why Wisconsin is helping out Michigan. Their biggest win, I understand, is Western Michigan, right? Maybe it's Northern Illinois, right? Both foreign 2 schools. You think, how the heck is Michigan? Because they don't have that one signature win. Forget about that one signature win. Look at how balanced their schedule is. The most balanced schedule out of everyone we've seen, right? You've seen a lot of teams that have really tough on one side, really weak on the other. I understand that it's all vanilla for Michigan, but they are 6-0. They play in the second best conference in college football. They're ranked number 8. They're being respected in the AP polls. They're continuing to climb. People are starting to see that with Michigan Wolverines. But we're saying of what they've done so far, they should be the number 1 school. And I want you to understand how tight this is. I want you guys to look at these numbers, right? We're saying how big of a jump Iowa is. We're saying Iowa's next level, right? Look how close this is. 50, 51, 52 with Michigan, right? Point in their production. Just a fraction is what separates them. Just any little thing could change that. And here's the thing. Michigan doing this, being number 8 in the AP polls, right? We had number 1 here. Look who they start to play. We're a Michigan State, who we're saying is a top 10 schools. We're saying Penn State, who is damn good. Maybe they're not, we're saying a little rated, I understand here, but still a really good school. Still got Maryland, which again, Maryland is a pretty good school, guys. Don't overlook them. Not to mention their big finale against Ohio State. So if they're doing this good, if Wolverines continue to run the table, there's no reason they should be ranked number 1 by season's end. Because we're saying they're ranked number 1 now. Now, at this moment in time, they should be ranked number 1. Anyways, so I'll leave it up to you guys. What do you think? Am I crazy? Some crazy dude on the internet who has bogus numbers. Again, the more data we collect week to week, the more accurate these rankings get. And you're seeing this. They're seeing it every week. I know there's some crazy schools. There's some Wake Forest in there. There's some UTSAs. There's some SMUs going too high, right? We're saying even this makes sense. How is we're saying Cincinnati shouldn't be respected, but anyways, we're seeing some crazy stuff out there. But again, there is no personal opinion of myself. This is strictly data, and the data gets better week to week. So as we'll see what happens going in to this upcoming big Saturday. We're going to get some more data. It'll officially cap off the first half of the season for the rest of these college football teams, the majority of them have to play 6 games. The remainder will play 6 games. Maybe there's one or two stragglers, but we should have everybody with completing the first half of the season, and that's what we're really going to dive into this. And you're going to see some big changes, and with the playoff committee just looming around, I've been pretty damn accurate when predicting the top 4 teams when the first playoff committee spots have come out. We'll see if we can coincide a live stream with that. But with that being said, guys, this long-winded speech, this is the Game Ticket Show. I appreciate you all who stopped by to check me out. We're on our way to 50. I'm putting in the work, guys. It's a database. I'm putting in work. I'm not sleeping. I got a newborn, right? I put her to bed. All right? I'm neglecting her. I'm just kidding. But taking care of her like a dad should. But putting away my own personal sleep time. I should be sleeping right now. But here I am. I want to talk about this. I want to talk about college football with you guys. Help me build this community. I want to talk college football. I just want like one dude, just one random dude to be there in the chat saying, hey man, what do you think about Chattanooga? And I'm going to say to you, Chattanooga doesn't play Division I. I don't have any opinions on that. It's like, all right, well then I want to talk to you more. But then there's some other guy goes in there and like, hey man, I'm a Coug fan. I need you to convince me that BYU should be in the playoffs. And I'll be like, bro, I got you. I'll make that happen. I will work the numbers to show you why this should be on there. But neither here or there. This is the Game Ticket Show. Give me a follow. If you're seeing this on the YouTubes, stop what you're doing. Head over to the Twitch channel. Give me a follow there. This is the platform to be. This is where I want to have these live discussions. This is what I want to build because I love doing this. Believe me, it's a big passion of mine, a big passion project to do this. And I cannot get enough of it. So yeah, absolutely love this. I love playing video games, love streaming, doing all that on here. And believe me, there'll be plenty of that as well. Later on, not now. Tired, sleep deprived, right? So I'm just the only free time I have will be just for this. But college football, let's focus on this for now, guys. Thank you all for watching. Say it one more time. Give me that. I feel like I'm pleading here. Give me that damn follow. No, give me that follow. And yeah, we will do this again next week. Another sleep deprived session with the Game Ticket Show. Thank you all for watching. I love your moms. Go kiss your mamas for me. Hug your dads. And high five your brothers and sisters. Good night, everybody.